good to go.
All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are. Really excited to talk to you guys today. This is not going to be a presentation, though, that talks to you about all of the AI tools that are out there and all of the AI tools that are being pitched to you and all of the tactical things you can do with AI these days. This is going to be in line with the title of this presentation, which is Beyond the Horizon. So there are plenty of vendors, platform providers, SaaS providers out there that can do a great job of telling you exactly what tools they have to offer and how they can help you. What I'd like to do is leverage our pretty broad experience with both B2B and B2C clients in getting you to really think about where AI is going, what the particular promises of it, what certain things are to be concerned about. And no, I do not mean the generic things, such as privacy and will it replace people. We've got some very specific things to cover today. So that said, I'm going to step into the first chart here, which is titled The Near Zero Cost of Strategic and Creative Facilitation. So if you look at the diagram we have here on the right, everyone is talking about obviously how AI is such a tremendous shift, and it is, but I think it's worth putting in context exactly what kind of shift is it and how does it compare to other shifts. So if we go back in time earlier, mid-1900s, we have computing being a big shift, right? Which got us more processing, more number crunching, more speed. And then we basically got to the internet, which gave us an access shift. So more access to more information communication. Then we got to a wave of mobile smartphone devices that gave us, and also connected TV type devices that gave us more access to distribution. So we went from more number crunching to more access to information to more distribution of content. And now basically what we have is a shift in the realm of production and analysis. Now, the reason I'm referring to near zero cost of strategic and creative facilitation is that the production cost, meaning generative AI, what it can do, is really only a near zero cost if what you're after is undifferentiated content. So we're going to talk more about that in a minute. What I would argue AI is very good at is facilitation, combining ideas, organizing them, reconciling conflicts between ideas, creating parallelism between ideas, and taking original thought and turning it into frameworks. So at this point, the pure generative creative abilities of AI are fairly limited, but it is exceptionally good at helping people facilitate more creativity and more structure to their content. So let's jump into this next chart. So what you're looking at here is a neural network. And I think you've all seen pictures of these before. But what I want you to really think about is, what does this really allow AI to do? And more importantly, what doesn't it allow AI to do? So for those who haven't been exposed to what a neural network looks like, let's just focus on the left part, which is your input layer, and the right part, which is your output layer. Well, when we hear about LLMs being trained, basically they're taking a bunch of inputs and they're optimizing the node values and the links between the nodes in order to generate the correct output. But in so doing, what they're essentially doing is taking the same stuff as input that anyone can find should they do some searching, and creating the similar stuff as output that anyone can find doing searching. So the input and output that it's used to is what it works with. So that's why I talk about that AI really isn't going to give you brand new ideas unless you are jamming things into it that are different from what it typically sees, or in jamming them together in the input layer in ways that combine them in ways that are different than what it typically sees. Otherwise, you're going to get the similar outputs to everyone else. So I refer to this as, seeking differentiated creativity. Anyone can write a blog post, put together a sales proposal, etc., using AI, come up with an agenda for a meeting with a client on the B2B side. But if you want something different out of it that your competitors are not going to have, you're going to have to give it something different to work with than your competitors are providing. Otherwise, you and 17 other competitors going after the same business are going to ask it the same things. It's going to use the same inputs. It's going to give you all the same outputs. So it's really only zero marginal cost in terms of production when we think about undifferentiated output. If you want differentiated output, it is not zero marginal cost. Differentiated output, differentiated creativity takes a superior operator. It takes a person, a prompt engineer or other, who has different ideas that they're thinking about putting together in interesting ways, and using an LLM to help that person do that, so that the outputs they get from an LLM are not the same outputs that everybody else will get from an LLM. So something else to think about. So picture a B2B rep, a BDR, SDR, account exec, CSR, etc. And they go in and they say, well, I don't know if AI is going to have that personal touch. It doesn't have the sensitivity I have. It doesn't pick up on all the signals that I pick up on, etc. So let's think about that for a second. How does that play with respect to AI being limited compared to a human being? So hence the title of this chart, More Human Than Human. So I'm going to refer to a study that was done in the UK where they were seeking to make chatbots close to as useful to a patient as a doctor would be to the patient, in terms of answering questions, providing guidance, etc. And the goal really was, how close can we get that AI to come to providing that experience to the end patient or customer in your case? Will that customer be able to tell the difference? So what turned out to be the case is that people actually preferred interacting with the chatbot to interacting with the doctors, which really begs the question, is being human all that great when it comes to B2B selling, B2B revenue growth? Does being more human on the AI side actually a better thing from the customer's perspective? And being a human being obviously comes with mistakes. It comes with frailty. Some people have exceptional emotional intelligence or EQ. Other people have exceptional quantitative intelligence, IQ. But rarely do people excel at both. But different customers are oriented differently. So I'll give you an example. There's a framework out there. We've used this extensively with our management team called E-Colors. It divides people up along 4 dimensions. You've got doers, thinkers, engagers, and empathizers. And typically, a person, a human being, excels on one of those dimensions and then has a secondary dimension as a backup. And occasionally it might have a third, but it's not that common. So meaning some people are real doers, other people need to think about something deeply, other people get going with all the energy and engagement of something, and other people get their thrill from empathizing with others, hearing their stories, getting aligned with that person. So if you're in B2B revenue growth, whether you're on the sales, CSR, marketing side, etc., you are probably going to have one of these colors, and each one of these is labeled with a different color, hence the term e-colors. You're going to be a doer, a thinker, an engager, or an empathizer primarily. Whether or not that is aligned with your end customer, well, that depends upon who the end customer is, who the particular personality you're talking to is. Whereas AI does not have this kind of problem. It can be trained to pick up on the signals that somebody puts out, a customer puts out. The way the customer communicates, is that customer a customer that's a doer that just wants to get things done now? Are they a thinker that wants to process a lot of information before moving forward, etc.? AI doesn't have the limitations that people have. Now, does that mean AI is going to replace people? Maybe at some point, certainly not tomorrow. But in reality, you having AI alongside a BDR or an SDR is going to help that person engage that customer better, because it can take into account the subtleties and the personality differences that a person may have trouble adapting to style-wise. All right. Next thing I'd like to cover, customers over technology. So I'm going to say, and people hear this all the time, but they still tend to violate this axiom, do not start with technology. Start with the customer journey. And I don't mean understanding awareness, consideration, purchase, and loyalty, but understanding what being better than your competitor actually would mean to a customer from their persona perspective, their journey perspective. You still want AI to do what people are not good at, but people do wear out. People have biases, people make poor decisions under pressure, and people process information differently depending upon who the person is, and they make assumptions about other people. So focusing on customers instead of technology is key. Another thing that's really important is when thinking of leveraging AI in the B2B world, really in B2C as well, is to not stop at revenue. Today, most of the AI tech that is being pushed at the beginning of that funnel. Get that deal, close that deal, predict who's most likely to sign that deal, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is, there is a lot of information throughout the entire customer lifecycle that should be incorporated into AI models and decision making, not just how to get a deal across the line. Next topic I want to cover quickly, and by the way, I put my email at the bottom of these charts because I know I'm going through this quickly. If you have any questions, want to discuss these or any other topics further, feel free to email, should be pretty responsive to that. So back to the future, something that started really in 1986. Engineers working at Motorola pioneered the use of Six Sigma. And for those of you that don't know what that is, basically it's using statistical methods to identify causes of variation and then reduce variation. The reason I bring this up is that a lot of people have spent time building AI models, building machine learning models, but they are not putting time into operationalizing those models so that they can continually revalidate the outcomes that those models produce, that they can monitor error rates, that they can figure out whether the models are drifting over time in terms of their predictive ability. So that's something, and I say we're really going back decades to remembering the idea of using statistical methods, although different ones today, to identify variation in what models predict from reality, and then continuously retrain AI models so that they stay on track. Things could vary for reasons such as seasonality, competitive activity, market factors, etc. but building a predictive model that is not in a constant retraining mode when it starts to drift in accuracy is a recipe for diluting yourself short-term by short-term going, hey, we have it. We have a very predictive model, but then finding out that over the mid and long term, you're just way off and operating under old assumptions. Okay. Another point, still developing your own thought leadership. So I can't count the number of marketing teams these days that will come up with a question. They will have AI spit out some content. It'll sound intelligent. It'll even be true. They'll tweak it a little bit. They'll post it and they'll say, hey, content strategy done. I have material going out into the dark funnel and I've done my job. Well, we all know, most of us know that's really not true. The opportunity, though, with AI is to accelerate your attention to detail in that creative and your personalization of that creative, not just to get the creative output faster. So, for example, they've seen this happen a lot. Let's say a B2B buying committee consists of the CFO, and the B2B marketing team will say, well, what do CFOs care about? They care about return on equity. They're going to incorporate weighted average cost of capital. They're going to look at gross margins. They're going to look at earnings. They're going to look at exit multiples. Well, if I respin my content around those things, all of a sudden I've now spoken to the CFO. Well, kind of true, but if you take it a level deeper, are you dealing, for example, with a CFO that would be what we would call an optimizer, who's all about tweaking the bottom line and maximizing financial value and is staring at that spreadsheet quarter to quarter to quarter? Or are you dealing with what we would call a visionary CFO, who is incorporating a long-term view of the business and is trying to make longer-term investments and can think bigger picture? If you think of your audience and start segmenting it more finely, not just around job title, but persona of the particular person in the job and how those different CFOs may vary, how different CEOs may vary, how different IT people may vary. Now you start to use AI to accelerate your development and empathy with different personality types and not just different job functions. And then as AI tech begins to absorb what kind of person am I hearing on this call or sensing in this email? Have I looked at their LinkedIn background? Do I see what they're posting? What companies have they come from? Were those visionary companies? Were those sluggish companies, et cetera? All of that plethora of data allows AI in a way that's very difficult for a person to assimilate all that information to decide what kind of person am I dealing with here, personality, not just seniority level and job function, which is currently a big limitation today in ABM. All right, we have 9 minutes left. I'm going to skip past this one. I think the slides will be made available so you can look back at it later. I want to talk about this one. This is a really big deal. So the end of Hail Marys and desperation, as I put it. So if we think about what AI is used for today in a B2B environment, there is absolutely a lot of predictive modeling. There is a lot, if you look at, demand base, or let's use 6 Sense, the whole 6QAing of a lead that tells you, when it should be passed over for handling. And when you think about that sort of thing, that does give you some information about the status of a lead, but now picture the actual life of AEs, BDRs, and SDRs. They get to the end of a quarter or the end of a month, pressure comes down to make quota, and they start going after everything under the sun. Some of it is aligned with the needs of the business because the business would agree, yep, you should go do everything again to get some revenue right now. We need it. But at that point, they're often under so much pressure that there's more irrationality in their decision making. Under pressure, people do not make the most rational decisions. What AI holds the promise for is evolving these predictive models further to not just say, okay, this is a customer who has reached a point where we should start interacting with them personally or hand it over to sales, but even further than that. I'm now at the end of a month or a quarter. I desperately need to get some more revenue. I am willing to put in an extra 24 hours of work over and above and beyond my normal workday because I've got to make quota. Okay, what are the leads that stand a chance of me accelerating the sales cycle if I take certain actions, and what should those particular actions be? That is a level where AI has not been brought to bear, but it is easy enough to do that today. Again, not just a normal predictive model, but the subtlety of increasing the likelihood of closure under certain circumstances. All right, next topic I'd like to cover real quick is this idea of moving from customer lifetime value to customer lifetime velocity. Some of you may have heard of the term longevity velocity. It refers to the idea that basically for every year a human being lives now, they're actually not a year closer to death as death would have been defined a year prior. They're less than a year closer to it because their longevity keeps getting extended because of advancements in healthcare. I believe the same thing is going to start to happen with customer lifetime. We're going to experience not just static customer lifetime value, but customer lifetime velocity, where the longer somebody is a customer, the better AI has gotten because more time has passed, the more info you have, and you are no longer 1 year into a customer's lifetime, 1 year closer to that customer churning, but you're less than a year because you've got better information and AI has gotten better. So I would encourage people to think about, how do I extend the lifetime of the customer, not just the value over that lifetime, but the velocity of that lifetime? How do I make that lifetime longer? Okay, getting closer to the end here, it's important for people to not just understand this idea of flaring versus focusing, but how AI can help with this. So anyone with a design thinking background could easily be familiar with this term. So flaring is the idea of idea generation. How many ideas can we come up with? What's possible? What if? The art of the possible, etc. And focusing is the idea of, okay, now we have to narrow it down. Stop thinking about all the possibilities and start thinking about what we're going to focus on, how we're going to prioritize. So generally, we see people go through a process of, or organizations, I should say, flaring and focusing. Idea generation followed by focus, followed by more idea generation, followed by focus. Usually it takes teams of people to do this because individuals have trouble context switching from flaring to focusing, back to flaring, back to focusing. What I would encourage you to think about is AI as a work buddy that can help you enforce the discipline on yourself that you might know you want or need, but you don't have a clone of yourself sitting next to you taking, counterbalancing you. So here's a really good example. One of the things I love to do is when our agency has developed a framework or a piece of thought leadership, white paper, whatever it might be, is to take that info back into GPT and to tell GPT, here's what we've done. And by the way, I hate it. I think it's undifferentiated. I think the competitor might say the same thing. And then ask for help. Impose restrictions on it that say, I know what I did, but now I'm going to ask you to pretend I hate what I did, and now help me from there. Okay, so last chart, and we'll close up here, is be very careful about the term having an AI strategy. Many people put the word strategy after something, an AI strategy, a marketing strategy, a technology strategy, and they enter the dangerous territory of thinking because they've used the word strategy that it is therefore strategic. Strategy is about making choices, and everything else that follows, be it AI or any other form of tech, is a tactical choice on whether and how to use it. Okay, so we have a couple minutes for questions. Happy to take those. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time today.
There we go. A little lag on my end. Apologies. Thank you so much for joining us today, Aric. We really appreciate it and hearing your words of wisdom. We do have 2 minutes here, so I will get one question off if I may. Let's see here. It says we don't want to fall behind in using AI, but we don't know exactly where to start. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my last chart, don't think of the AI first. Companies, people have made this mistake for decades. There's something out there called a CRM. Let's get it, and then we'll be able to manage our clients. There's something out there called analytics, Google Analytics. Let's get it, and we'll understand our clients. There's something called a customer data platform. Let's get it, and we'll be able to get a 360 view and manage the 360 of the customer. No, no, and double no. Start with where your organization is going and your business objectives. And as those trickle down, identify the pain points, and then ask yourself which of those pain points could benefit from increased predictive modeling, increased content generation, increased context switching, increased analysis of data in order to understand complexity. Start top down. And I know half the people listening will forget that when we get off the call and go, where do I start with AI? Go back and listen to a recording of the webinar again.
Excellent. Excellent. Aric, thank you again so much. Again, CEO of Zion. You can find him on LinkedIn. And we appreciate it. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.